Okay, on to this week's sponsor interview now, and this week's sponsor is VMRay. VMRay makes a malware analyzer that I think a few of you incident response people out there will find pretty handy. Certs all over the place are currently using it to score and analyze samples, but there are an awful lot of people out there who I think, will probably quite like this stuff. The killer use case for VMRay for most people is probably just that it's not a public sandbox, it's more like a private sandbox. A lot of people don't want to submit samples to, say, VirusTotal, because if you're dealing with a sophisticated adversary, you probably don't want them seeing their samples being submitted to VT. VMRay is also agentless, and they think they're doing a great job of making the sandbox undetectable to avoid the halting problem. They've embedded their analysis stuff in the hypervisor itself, so they're not loading up drivers that the malware can see. Little things like that have really improved it. So VMRay has built some malware analysis tooling that can give you a general shadiness score on samples, as well as provide analysts with a verbose output that's thankfully been tuned somewhat. They offer this primarily as a cloud service, but they do offer an on-prem solution as well for the doubly paranoid among us. And both versions have some nice bells and whistles. It can give you an output that you can add, just straight away, plug into your threat intel feeds, for example. You can use it to test Yarra rules. It can do things like that. It's real tooling that solves some real problems. VMRay booked the sponsorship of this episode, but instead of getting one of its own people onto the show, they nominated a user to do it for them, Koen van Impe. He's an independent security consultant who works for Belgian companies, and he's a big VMRay fan. He joined me to talk about the tool, what he uses it for, and to just generally give us an overview of the product. Here he is.
So VMRay is an automated malware analysis sandbox. It's basically a sandbox where you can upload malware documents or malware files. It does different analysis, different jobs in different environments. And then all the results of the malware analysis get merged together. And you can look at the indicators and how the malware behaves, how it behaves in the memory, what files are created, what network connections are made. My basic usage is in automation. So I'm also involved in developing a threat intelligence platform, not with the core of the threat intelligence sharing platform, but with the automation of the platform. And the use case is I attach a malware to an event in the threat intelligence platform. Then the job gets submitted to VMRay. VMRay does its magic, does the malware analysis. And then I import the indicators that come out of VMRay in the threat intelligence platform. And then those indicators get pushed to the different security devices. I got introduced to Karsten back when he was just starting with VMRay, and during the demo, he was telling me what the product was not doing. And maybe it's very subjective, but if someone is giving a demo and is explaining, okay, this is not working, we're working on this, it raises the trust. Okay, you see what's not working in the product, but at least you get a feeling that he's honest and open about the product, and then I try to follow them a little bit more closely.
Now, I guess one thing I'm interested in, Koen, is it seems like these types of tools were primarily used internally at antivirus companies, but 2017 being 2017, it seems like these days these types of analysis tools are required outside of AV companies, and AV companies are hardly likely to share their internal analysis tools because that's pretty sensitive intellectual property. Is that why companies like VMRay exist?
Partly. I don't think it's the main reason. One of the reasons is that if, as a company, you receive a malware and it has not been analyzed before in a public sandbox or by an antivirus company, you need to have some expertise to analyze it. Either you can hire some reverse engineers, set up your own lab, but that requires time and expertise, and not all companies have that capability. So an alternative is to buy your own sandboxes, and VMRay is one of those sandboxes that you can use internally to have an automated analysis, the same as antivirus companies do, but have it internally. If you use something that's public, especially for sensitive malware, you basically giving away to an attacker that he has been detected, because most of those signatures get shared publicly. And if an attacker, for example, monitors results in VirusTotal, you uploaded a sample to VirusTotal, it gets analyzed there by the AV engines. You're telling the attacker, okay, we found you.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. Don't worry. So that's interesting. I'm just wondering how far the automation goes. I mean, I'm imagining that a lot of the output of this stuff, it would just run certain types of analysis and checks and then just give you a pretty verbose output. Is that the general idea here?
Yeah, it can be pretty verbose. So my use case is mostly extracting the indicators, the file created, the registry keys that are created, and the network connections. But if you look at VMRay, the output, it's pretty verbose. So every process that's created, every action that's being done by the malware is listed. But that's one of the great things of VMRay, at least for my usage. You can skip the part that's not interesting for you. So if you're interested in the in-depth analysis, you can look at all the different steps and analyze it and maybe see if there's some obfuscation or evasion of malware analysis going on. But if you're only interested in extracting the indicators to protect your environment, you can just skip all the details.
So what is the coolest thing you've actually found with it?
That's a difficult question to answer. Coolest things is when you see that a malware is trying to fool you, like most of the malware tries to do. It tries to do connections to sites that you see in normal traffic. And that's one of the dangers that you often have when you do the analysis, that you see malware behaving. You think, okay, this is something that I can use to detect it, and basically it ends up to be a normal website.
So things like domain fronting to Amazon or a CDN or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It's one of the reasons I got more interested in it. I follow the SANS course on reverse engineering, because the automated analysis only gives you a limited view. It gives you a good view, but there's still a huge possibility that you miss some code. And if you do reverse engineering, you can actually read the code. Well, maybe that's a little bit exaggerated, but you can at least see what all the different functions are in a malware. Whereas with an automated analysis, it depends on how it's run in the environment, and you have to run it multiple times in multiple environments to be sure that you've discovered everything.
So I'm guessing now at this point in the interview, I'm realizing that doing malware analysis is something you're actually doing for fun. Is that right, Koen?
Yeah, absolutely. if you get bored in the evening,
you're our type of sick person. It's really great. So I mean, how much of because VMRay isn't the only tool that dabbles in this space, right? Like generally speaking, when it comes to these types of tools, how easy is it for someone who's got like a good but not ninja level of skill to be able to use tooling like this to pick apart samples they find in the wild? Like, how realistic is that they can just get it and use it?
It's fairly easy. The interface to VMRay is just a web interface. So if you do not have any scripting capabilities to automate the things, you can just upload a sample like VirusTotal. It's similar to VirusTotal in that sense. You have a sample, you upload it to the analysis, and it gives you back a scoring. So that's the easiest use case. You get a score that says this is malicious, or it's highly likely malicious, or we're pretty sure that it's safe.
So basically what you're telling me is it's like VirusTotal, but it won't snitch.
Yeah. It's it's like VirusTotal, but you get more details. And one of the things that I really would like to mention is what I like with VMRay is if the malware is being analyzed, so it's run in a virtual machine, you can actually connect to the virtual machine and you see the different automation steps. You see, for example, a Word document opening and micro executing, but you can intervene with that automation. And that's something that you cannot do if you upload it, for example, to VirusTotal. Yeah, it gets run, it gets analyzed, you don't have any control on it. But with VMRay, you can connect to that virtual machine and make it follow different paths.
And you mentioned that it can be quite verbose in the output. I mean, is the output something that a human can then sit there and parse and try to figure out? Because you might get something that looks 50% shady and 50% good. But I'm guessing that if you walk through the verbose output if you've got a skilled analyst, then they will be able to make a call based on the output of VMRay as to whether or not it's good or bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And VMRay tries to avoid reporting the obvious calls. So something that's inherent to a normal system operation, it does not get reported. So your output, although it's verbose, it's not being polluted with the normal system behavior. And that makes your job a little bit easier. You still have to assess, okay, this is a malware call, this is an evasion call, this is something that I can use. But at least you get focused on what calls are made by the malware itself.
So can you tell us of one particularly good sample, like one particularly good job it did with a sample that you provided to it, where you weren't quite sure if it was bad or you weren't quite sure if it was good? I mean, walk us through a case study, if you will.
That's typically it's with a Word document, a Word or a PDF document. Where you don't know if there's something malicious hidden in the file, and instead of doing their own analysis, you just upload it, and you see if there's something extra being hidden in the file.
So, like in terms of whether or not this should be a first step, in your view, do you think like it makes for a good first step when you're first dealing with a suspect sample, or are there other things you should be doing first?
The first step you should do before uploading it to VMRay is checking if it's already been analyzed by public sandboxes. So just create file hashes and see if you can find those file hashes in one of the public sandboxes. Because if someone already did an analysis and has results that you feel, okay, I'm confident with these results, then you don't have to go through the trouble of doing the analysis yourself.
Yeah, that would make sense. But I mean, getting around a hash isn't too difficult, right? Like that's pretty basic obfuscation to defeat that approach, which is,
Absolutely, but for most organizations, the type of malware that they're getting is not really targeted. So most of the time, it's just run-of-the-mill malware, and is not really intended to only detonate within their organization. So most of the time, you can just say, okay, has someone else seen this? And how does it behave? And are my antivirus updated? Or my security devices updated? So, and then going through all the trouble yourself of doing analysis, I think it's a little bit a waste of time. But it's a good thing to test. So, for example, one of the features that's included in VMRay is the Yara rules. So, and if you're developing your own Yara rules and you want to check, okay, do they catch this malware? You can upload them to VMRay and see if your own custom-written Yara rules gets a hit when you upload a threat sample.
All right. Well, Koen van Impe, thank you very much for joining us on Risky Business to talk through what your pals at VMRay are doing. It sounds pretty cool. I think we can just cap the pitch off at its virus total, but it won't snitch you out.
Okay, sounds good. Perfect.
All right. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Okay. Bye-bye.
That was Koen van Impe there talking about VMRay. And I think the pricing for this stuff looks pretty reasonable. So do check out VMRay at VMRay.com. Big thanks to them for sponsoring this week's edition of the show. And that is it for this week's podcast, the second last one for the year. I do hope you've enjoyed it. Until next week, I've been Patrick Gray. Thanks for listening.